we're just a few weeks away from the Raiders' first game this season. Both the Las Vegas Raiders and UNLV football will start the season under new leadership. Las Vegas Review-Journal sports columnist Ed Graney spoke to Amber Renee Dixon about those changes, as well as his thoughts on the A's moving forward with the construction of their new stadium.
So, Ed, the skepticism surrounding the A's stadium and whether it will get built, is it justified in your opinion?
I mean, I think skepticism is always justified until we know what the financing will be, until we know that all the money is in the bank to build the ballpark. So, yeah, I think that's fair. We don't know yet how John Fisher intends to pay for the entire ballpark. And also, as you know, this price is probably going to go up even more. It's already gone up from 1.5 to 1.7. Now he's saying it might be $2 billion. There's tariffs to think about, as he talked about. There's cost in construction. So until the entire financing is known, I think skepticism is fair, but I still think it's going to get built.
And why is that?
Mark Bedane. I think Mark Bedane, who's the president of the A's now, who used to be the president, as you know, he was in the Raiders organization for 30 years. He was the president of the Raiders for some time, helped lead the charge of building Allegiant Stadium. I think that he is the perfect person for the A's and to get this ballpark built. And I think they made an incredible decision on hiring Mark Bedane to do this. So I don't think he'll fail in this venture. He told us all at the groundbreaking that you were at, Amber, that it will be built by 2028, that it will happen on time. And Mark Bedane has always followed through what he says, so I completely believe him.
Yeah, you wrote a nice column on that. And when we spoke with him at the groundbreaking, he kind of downplayed the fact that he used to be with the Raiders for so long, which was a rival of the Athletics. And now he works for them.
Yes.
Can you give that perspective to our viewers who may not be familiar with that history?
Well, he was with the Raiders for 30 years. He and Mark Davis grew up together. They were really, really close. Obviously, the owner of the Raiders, very close friends throughout the years, going up through the organization. Mark, obviously, the son of Al Davis, the former owner. So, yeah, I mean, the A's and the Raiders didn't have the best of relationships in Oakland when it was happening at the Coliseum, and who wanted to move and who didn't want to move and all of that. So I think the two Marks worked well together for years, and then it came to an end when Mark Bedane was stepped away as the Raiders president. I still think there's probably a good relationship there because they were together for so long, but given the kind of animosity between the Raiders and the A's, it is a little ironic that now they'll both be in Las Vegas and they'll both moved here.
As for the Raiders, they're coming off a 4-win season.
Yes.
What do you think about their odds this year, given some of the off-season moves they've made?
Well, I think the most important thing was to hire Pete Carroll as the coach. What Pete does is he brings stability to this organization, stability that they haven't had in some time, in my opinion. In his low 70s, he's been around forever. He's one of, I think, only 3 or 4 college coaches to win a college national championship and a Super Bowl. So he's one of the best coaches ever in football in terms of those credentials. And I think Pete just brings a sense of professionalism to the organization and a sense of stability that things are going to get done in a professional manner. Some of the moves they've made in the offseason, I think they've helped him. Geno Smith is the new quarterback, was with Pete in Seattle. I think that's going to help them a lot. I think Geno, like Pete does to the organization, Geno brings stability to the most important position on the field. They've been in flux at quarterback for the last several years. They won't be in flux now with Geno. So I do think, I'll be surprised if it's 4 wins again. I'll be very surprised at that. I think, if you can double your wins in 1 year under Pete and get to the 8-9 range, I think it'd be very successful.
When you just talked about Pete Carroll, you mentioned doing things in a professional manner, I think, a couple of times. Why is that so important? Did that not exist, in your opinion, prior? It
was just so in flux with so many coaches. And when you have all these different coaches, it's hard to kind of, create a culture and kind of get a consistency in the rooms and in the locker room every day. And I think now with Pete, I think there's going to be that with him because of his experience, and I think that's going to help them tenfold in terms of running a good organization, giving him control of what he needs control of to run that team and to see how he sees fit. And I just think his experience is going to mean a lot.
You wrote in one of your columns that Geno Smith is like Pete Carroll, but with the helmet on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you think they are looking for him to do as far as longevity? Is this more of just as you wrote, a leader who comes in and perhaps help the younger quarterbacks and we're preparing for the future, or let's win now?
Well, I think they want to win now. I mean, Pete said it. I mean, Pete's in his low 70s. I don't know how long Pete's going to do this. Who don't know how long Pete's going to do this.
And how old is Geno Smith?
Gino's in his 30s.
Yeah.
So, Gino, I think when you look at the contract, I think you go into it thinking a couple years at least. They want him in there in that position for a couple years at least. And you can do a lot in a couple years if you have the right people around him. And I think, at least offensively, they've put the right people around him. They have some questions on defense, but I think they want Geno Smith to win games. That's what it comes down to, winning games. I think he has proven his last few years in Seattle, if you look at his numbers, he can win games if he's protected well, if he's kept clean from an offensive line. That's going to be a big challenge to the offensive line to keep him clean and to keep him protected. But I think, he proved enough in Seattle to where if that happens and some of the people he has around him on the Raiders, the Brock Bowers of the world and people like that they'll be able to move the ball, and I think they'll be in games.
What have you thought about Tom Brady's involvement in the Raiders?
I think it's great because he's a winner. I think you need as many winners as you can in an organization. And obviously he's proven to be not only the greatest quarterback, but, he's one of those guys who most things he touches succeeds. So I think it's great to have him above. I think, he had a lot to do with the hirings of those below him now. And I think, anytime you kind of have a sounding board of a Tom Brady, I think it's great. He's been around. He knows football as well as anyone. He knows what takes to winning culture. He knows what takes to winning championships. And I just think when you have a guy like that to sound things off and to ask him his opinion, you can't go wrong.
Should he still be able to be a broadcaster?
That's a good question. Well, for his paycheck, he probably thinks he should be good enough to be a broadcaster. Look, the owners decided what they decided. So if they decided that, he can be a broadcaster, but he has these limitations on his dealings with the team he's a partial owner of, then I'm not going to go against what they decide. That's their league. That's their decision to make, and that's the decision they made, and he's still a broadcaster, and like I said, he's doing very well for himself.
All right. I mean, because I guess the potential conflict of interest could be, what if he broadcasts a Raiders game and talks them up? Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. So, I think he's got to stay somewhat neutral in the whole Raider situation, and it's probably best that he's not on Raider games because, for the kind of not the lack of, but the conflict of interest like you talk about. But he can stay away from that, and he can comment on other games, and he can call his games. And, I think it's a learning experience for him. I don't know if he was the best at it last year. I mean, when you go in and do something like that for the first time, it takes a while to understand the timing of it, the situations of it, when you're supposed to come in and out. I mean, you're an expert at this, and you know how long that takes to really become an expert at it. So, I think he'll get better in the years to come because he's a perfectionist, as we know, in his whole life, and he's not going to fail at something.
You also said earlier the greatest quarterback. Do you mean of all time? Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback?
I mean, I don't think you can argue with his championships. I think, I don't base everything on championships. I base a lot on it. But what he did as a sixth-round pick to come all the way back and to take over that team, take over that franchise, lead that franchise, and then I think the most important thing was to go to Tampa and win a Super Bowl. That really showed, to me, his greatness, that he could go to a completely different situation, which he was not in tune with like he was with the Patriots, and still win a championship. I thought was, kind of cemented his legacy.
Last thing, UNLV football, new coach.
Yes, Dan Mullen.
Yes, coming off some successful seasons, but then they lose Barry Odom. So what do you foresee for them?
Well, he coached at Mississippi State and Florida. He's been at big-time places. He knows big-time people. Spent some years. I think it really helped him that he spent the last few years at ESPN and on the TV side of things. So did Josh Pastner, by the way, the basketball coach. I think it helped both those guys really see their sports from afar, this NIL world, this transfer portal world. So when they got their next opportunity, they really knew going in what it was about and how to approach it. I think Dan Mullen's going to do a really good job. He knows what he's doing. He's coached some of the best quarterbacks who's ever come out of college and in the pros. He's kind of a quarterback guru, and I think he's going to do a really fine job. Barry Odom did a great job, obviously, setting a standard by which UNLV football should now be known for. He had historic seasons at UNLV in a very short amount of time. And I think when that is set, Dan's gone into the transfer portal. He's brought on a lot of, high-level players. I think the Mountain West is a league that they can certainly compete in for championships every year. You have Boise, who's, only the last year before they go to the Pac-12. I think when these 5 teams that are going to the Pac-12 leave, I think UNLV, and I've written this, I think UNLV should be the standard bearer of that new conference, of that new Mountain West. I think they should be the one everyone's chasing. I think they should be good enough in football and men's basketball to where they're the ones everyone are trying to catch. So I think it'll be disappointment if they're not.
Gosh, that would be certainly a turnaround from recent history, right? I mean, past those 2 years
before
that we're talking about.
Before Barry Odom, exactly.
Yeah. Ed Graney, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Amber. I appreciate it. Thank you.